Hello and good morning. My name is Jonathan Clark, and I'm the Youth Services Consultant at the Vermont Department of Libraries, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Red Clover Book Award Virtual Conference. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, there's a few tech things happening, which is part of the virtual world, but we are so happy to have you with us. We have a lot of great things on the docket today. We are going to jump right into it with our keynote, Andrea Cerrumi, who we are so happy to have with us today. And we will start with Andrea and give her plenty of time, and there'll be time at the end for questions. And then you will be able to hear from the committee, hear about all the fantastic books on the list. So Andrea Cerrumi is an author, illustrator, cartoonist, originally from New York, who lives with her spouse and dog in Philadelphia. They studied sequential storytelling for an English BA at Harvard and illustration MFA at the School of Visual Arts. Their first book, Accident, was an NPR Great Read, and their second book, Crab Cake, won the Vermont Red Clover Book Award last year. When they're not inventing croissant-based animals, they like reading about ordinary and ridiculous history. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. Then let's get started. I just want to say a quick and enthusiastic thank you all for joining me here this morning and for this talk about crab cake. I'm going to start sharing my screen because I have a whole bunch of images I want to show you to illustrate a bunch of points. So this is the last you're going to see my floating head until afterwards. All right. So huge thank you to the Vermont Department of Libraries, to Vermont teachers, librarians, school staff, students, and the families of students for reading all of these fantastic books that were nominated for the Red Clover Award, and for reading and talking about crab cake. I am incredibly grateful that you considered it, and just kind of floored that you gave it this award. So just thank you. And thank you again for joining my floating virtual head this morning to talk a bit about how and why I made the book. So just some structure. What I want to do this morning is to discuss the 3 stages of making this book. The early ideas behind the book, the writing and drawing to express those ideas, and then the 3rd stage of the book's life, which is what you do, which is sharing it with readers. And as an overarching theme, I kind of want to ask you to hold the idea of asking questions in your minds. Because at each of these 3 stages of making the book, the idea of asking questions was really important. And that's because when telling stories and making art, it only like really works if I'm expressing things that I genuinely care about. And I mean, the reason I tell stories is to explore and process and reflect on things that preoccupy me. And that can be big problems I'm wrestling with, or something that honestly cracks me up, or something that I love and want to celebrate. And it's the same thing with other people's books or movies or art that I love. When I encounter those, they feel like something that's inviting me into a conversation or inviting me into an experience instead of, say, just telling me something. And if you are just telling someone something, that's informational. It's a whole different outline and brief and project. But to go back to that idea of questions, just making art work so much better when I start a book asking questions that I don't actually have the answers to. And, I made the book and I still don't have the answers to the questions that started it. And pretty much all of the time, those questions that I'm asking myself as an adult are questions that also preoccupied me as a kid, too. And I just want to make space for the idea that it's really hard to have unanswered questions as an adult. My very rough theory is that generally kids are expected to have questions but not answers, and adults to have answers, but not questions. And at an extreme, I mean, that's not reality, right? Like adults have tons of questions and kids have answers to add to the conversation. But there's so much pressure to only have answers as an adult, especially when talking with kids about the hard stuff. And if you can't talk about the hard stuff unless you have the answers, there's a lot of pressure to just avoid talking about it at all. But, you know, how can we get to a better place if we don't talk about where we've been and where we are? So why not have questions together? Kids are in this too. That top-down dynamic can be really deadening. As you know, it separates and just kind of locks both parties down. So I want to talk a little bit about the questions that inspired this book, which I've talked a little bit before in some of the other videos I've recorded about this book. But I mean, to be frank, when I started making this book, it was 2015 and 2016, and basically, I was. It's a funny book about a crab. I started this book thinking about the idea of despair in the face of disaster and cruelty. I was thinking a lot about gun violence and hate crimes. In 2016, I was specifically thinking about the mass shootings at the Pulse nightclub and the Charleston Emmanuel Church. And back when I was 7 in the 90s, I was thinking about the shooting of Yoshihiro Hattori. In 2016, I was thinking about global warming and Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Katrina. And back in 1998, it was the hole in the ozone layer and endangered species and so on. And I think my question was something like, when there's all this weight, when there's this despair, this catastrophe, like, where do you even begin, right? So I was asking this when I was 30. And I was also asking this when I was 13 and 9 and 6, and I'm still asking this now. So in thinking about disaster, I also thought about this thing that humans can do in emergencies where they stop and help each other. And I experienced this firsthand in New York City during the 2003 Northeast blackout. And I think it was the first time in my life I experienced like the power of this feeling where, okay, you know, it's the height of the summer. The electricity board is like completely gone throughout a number of states. And, you know, you'd expect 10 million extraordinarily inconvenienced and overheated people to freak out a little bit. And instead, I was walking around New York City trying to look at my mom, who my dad and I had lost track of earlier in the day. We were trying to extract her from the city. But I was just walking around on the street, which was pitch black. Like you could not see your hand in front of your face. Which, if you think about the amount of cars in New York City, that becomes a dangerous problem very, very quickly, right? You need to be able to direct traffic or maintain, you know, transportation, and people are stranded, people are thirsty, people are, you know, they can't get back home. They have to walk enormous distances to get home. And there is just this huge spirit of patience, of generosity and good humor, honestly, and people sharing information with each other and directing traffic, sometimes with lightsabers, people putting folks up in their homes, people needing help from each other and offering it to each other. So I experienced giving and receiving directions. Strangers helped me find my way down a completely pitch black street. I helped people, you know, find their way. It felt really good. It felt really joyful to help and be helped. If you've ever been like caught in a rainstorm where you're drenched and you see someone else who's also drenched and you're both just drenched, and it's, you know, it's kind of awful, but you look at each other and just laugh. It was that feeling of like, we're in this together and it's ridiculous and we're going to help each other. And this blackout didn't last nearly as long as, you know, the one after Hurricane Sandy, when elderly folks were stranded up in public housing with no services and broken elevators and nobody was coming for them. So groups like Occupy and Neighbors just started organizing food and medicine runs. And, you know, I don't need to tell you this. You've all experienced this in your lives, especially after 2021, this spirit of mutual aid, of helping out. And this happens in big catastrophes like the San Francisco earthquake, which is pictured here. It also happens in small catastrophes, right? Small, personal, localized catastrophes. Someone falls, one of your friends suddenly has a mental health crisis, someone can't pay a bill, someone gets sick, heck, someone has a baby, and folks will help. It is a very natural thing for them to help. And that experience really stayed with me. So it came back to me when I was thinking about the idea of just despair that freezes you and shuts you down. And I read this book at the time by Rebecca Solnit called A Paradise Built in Hell, about the extraordinary communities that come together and arise during emergencies. And her whole point is that giving and receiving help is just a powerful, joyful way to connect with your humanity. And one of the things she talks about is the radical power and human connection that people experience when their community goes through a disaster, and the brave and creative ways that they will do what they have to save each other. The human violence comes in more when authorities either crack down on these people to assert order, like we saw during the Danziger bridge shootings after Hurricane Katrina, or when some groups close off against people they consider others. So when I was making this book, I was also asking, like, how does mutual aid work, and why does it matter? And it goes beyond just helping each other. It goes beyond charity. It's really essentially about needing each other. Every participant is both a giver and recipient in acts of care that bind them together. So quickly returning to questions I had when I was younger, caring about stuff that felt very pressing and felt like emergencies and felt very dangerous, felt also very lonely and futile, because, adults could tell me, you're worried about the ozone layer, make a poster about the ozone layer. And it didn't really feel like it was going to do anything. I mean, I knew that I didn't have the financial or political power as a kid, right? Like, I have no money, I can't drive a car. I have a fridge in my house, right? Like, although kids are the focus of incredible forces of protection and attention in our society, society really doesn't expect kids to exercise power. So I felt really discouraged in thinking about these big problems because they felt too big to change, and I felt very alone in caring about them. And part of that was also because as a kid, I didn't know a lot about how power and change actually work. And as a kid, I also didn't know a lot about how a lot of things worked. I still don't. But one big way that political and social change actually works is through the power of mutual aid, nourishing and reinforcing radical activism. And you need both pieces of that, because one piece by itself doesn't work, right? Like as a metaphor, like crab and the fish can feed and comfort themselves, but unless they address the trash, they're going to die, right? I could clean up an area near my neighborhood, and that helps at the moment. But as long as there's just this, tsunami of plastic goods that keep entering the system, it's just going to get polluted again and again, right? And I want to give you a few examples of this in action, of mutual aid acting in solidarity with political activism. So you've no doubt all heard about Rosa Parks and the 1955 to 1956 Montgomery bus boycott to end racial segregation on city transport. Activists boycotted the buses for a ridiculously long period, like 381 days. 17,000 African-American bus riders needed to move around, get to work, go home, and they couldn't use the buses. That is an enormous period of time. That is a huge undertaking. And how this actually worked was that a bunch of groups planned this very, very specific political activist action and then supported it doing this massive, massive showing of mutual aid. The Montgomery Improvement Association organized a volunteer car fleet. Northern donors bought a whole bunch of station wagons. The white auto insurance people wouldn't insure any of the cars, so a bunch of other black insurance companies would insure them. Somebody volunteered their parking lot because they couldn't park these cars safely. And one really awesome person who made the whole thing work, along with a bunch of other people whose names we will you and I don't know, or maybe you do, but folk on the street don't necessarily know, is this amazing person called Georgia Gilmore, who is a cafeteria worker who eventually got fired from her job because of her political organizing. But she was a force of nature. She organized domestic workers in Montgomery, Alabama to cook extra food, sandwiches, meals, desserts, that kind of thing. You know, whenever they weren't actually working, they're cooking at night, they're cooking on the weekends on their own time, and then they would sell that food. And with the money, they would donate it to the bus movement for gas and for car maintenance money. So this is how the movement got funded, was domestic workers, you know, coming together and risking a lot, because if their employers found out about all of this, they would lose their jobs. You know, this was Montgomery. They could have been fired, they could have been arrested, they could have been beaten. Like, these were real risky, uncomfortable, you know, hard actions that they took, and they all did them. And I love this because obviously it's amazing, but also I think we hear a lot about heroic individuals when we talk about change, but not enough about just the heroic anonymous collectives of people coming together to help each other. Another example of this are the Lesbian Blood Sisters of San Diego, which, I mean, first of all, you can't get a better title than that. But during the AIDS crisis of the 80s and 90s, when the government and mainstream society essentially abandoned queer people and other HIV patients to die, HIV patients, many of whom were gay men, really needed blood donations, but gay men were, and unfortunately still are, forbidden from donating blood. So the Blood Sisters and other lesbian volunteers organized blood donations. And they did that to, you know, provide an essential service and also to just demonstrate love and care and support. And all of these issues are way more complex than I'm presenting them right now, but these are just the points that I want to stress. Mutual aid has also long been a sustaining part of queer life, and this was especially true during the AIDS crisis. But that alone wouldn't have been enough to, you know, help end or fight the AIDS crisis, and that's where direct action comes in. And a single example of this is ACT UP, a grassroots group that used education and nonviolent and radical protests to change pharmaceutical practices and patients' access to healthcare. So all these things were on my mind when I started making this book. Like, all these things just swirling around in the background. And I was also drawing this little crab. And the thing with art is, like, there's a point where you just have to trust that whatever you care about is going to come out through the art. And if you've got something on your mind, if you're drawing something about a ridiculous little crab, or, I don't know, shoes going on a picnic, or the space race, but with monkeys, like, it's going to come out in some way. So I started with these two very strong ideas, and I kept coming back to this crab. Also, I mean, look at this guy. It was something so compelling about the idea of like a tiny little crab just kind of skittering out under an enormous cake with this kind of like Buster Keaton, like silent movie star face, just very blank, interacting with these fish. That just felt very, very compelling. So these ideas immediately attracted themselves to each other in my head and started coming out in the art I was making. I mean, again, at this point, I want to make a book. I think it's going to be about this. I have no idea what the book is actually going to be about. I have no idea like how I'm actually going to write it. But these two points just kind of like magnetized to each other and then started gathering momentum. So I want to share with you now the second part of this talk, which is about the making of the book. And so chronologically, this is where I was again at the beginning. I had this idea about this little crab with this big cake, and it was really funny. And also I like the idea that the other sea creatures like enjoyed the food, but also were a little bit puzzled by it. And there's just something so random and silly and kind of inexplicable about this little crab giving all of these cakes and things to other creatures. And then I kept wondering, like, how am I going to bring these two ideas together, right? The devastation and the crab. And I just had this image in my head of this little pink cake just bopping out over a blasted wasteland. And that was like the emotional thesis of the book. It's like, that is what the book is about. I have no idea what's going to happen next. And if you've read the book, obviously, like, this isn't it. But I think that's the crux of it. But now I have to actually make the thing, right? Because I think I think the point that I'm going to try to make, or the one that I want to explore, is how awesome it is to do ordinary and kind human things in the face of overwhelming disaster. Right, you know, something light. So these were the ideas. So now it brings me to the making it part and the questions that now brought to bear in this stage where, okay, I have these ideas. How do I express them using text and images? And also, what am I doing? How is this going to work? So these are examples of just like me sitting down and just busting out ideas. I have, at this point, I haven't got a script. I haven't figured out the rest of the book. I'm just noodling, I call it, like just kind of generating ideas and jokes and questions and things, and just trying to figure out like, hey, like what's in this? What's in this? What's driving this? And usually this part of the process feels horrible. It's slow and strange, and you have no idea where you're going. Like, you know, having a lot of questions and no answers. But it's what starts grinding those gears. And now I get to talk about story mechanics, which is my favorite thing to do. So again, making this book, 2 core ideas. Crab bakes these cakes, kind of weird. Also, there's a big disaster that happens to them. And I want to explore the idea of mutual aid and activism. Great. All right, so how do I show this, right? I don't want to say this like, you know, in the text, like, you know, this is about mutual aid, blah, 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 because I'd be telling. So okay, on one level, like, how do I show that something is unusual? Crabs baking is unusual. Well, you show that something is unusual by presenting what is usual first, and then you present the unusual thing, and it immediately registers as an anomaly. You know, like one of these things doesn't belong, etc. So I knew that I wanted to start off establishing a lot of loops of normal fishy fish activities, and then, you know, there'd be like a sting, like a crab bakes cakes at the end of that, and then go back to that. So the idea of loops and kind of like getting into a like daily routine of fish life, and then the unusual thing was already important in the structure. And then I also thought about the idea of a pause, where if you establish, again, like something that is usual and happening a lot and over again, as a reader, you come to expect that thing to continue, right? And so when you stop it, when you build up and build up and build up and build up a whole bunch of noise, and then you're suddenly silent, that moment is very emotional, it's very attention-getting, it's very poignant, and it builds up a lot of power because suddenly you miss the thing that was there. And I mean, it's a pretty obvious metaphor, right? Like you miss real life, you miss, you know, comfort, you miss the fish doing their fish things. And that is how you convey loss, right? Like that is how you show loss in the moment of a story. And this happens in plays. This also happens in animation. Oh my God, Michael Dudukta just makes me cry all the time. But I remember these things. I was thinking about like how to really build in these kinds of loops of normalcy and color and vibrancy, so that when I took it away from all of you, you would miss it. So okay, that was like the first half of the book. It was like figuring out, all right, I think maybe there's gonna be like 3 passes of that. Fish activities, crab. Fish activities, crab. Fish activities, crab. Giant disaster, and then I don't know how I'm gonna end the book. That was basically my process for like half of writing this story. And when I think about structure, like this is not something that I am original in doing. Like a lot of other artists and picture book people do this as well. My favorite example is Alicia Cooper's Big Cat, Little Cat, which, trigger warning, is about pet death. But this book is very powerful for the same reason. It does the same thing. It establishes these loops on the page, like through the repetition of the cat's routine and the text, through the visual repetition of the cat's little cameos throughout the page. That is their real life, like these spreads with just like cat, 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 cat thing. And then suddenly when the older cat dies and the little black cat is left alone, you know, the repetition ends, the listing ends, the page empties, and you feel that loss. And then it starts up again, because this is about how life continues after death, right? New cat enters, and then the loop resumes. And if, you know, this sounds at all familiar to you, that is Crab Cake. That is how this book was built as well. So I started off pretty strong with like that idea of loops, and then I went back in and started doing research about fish and all the insane things that they do and how they live their lives, and kind of like started building the language of the book. This is very, very common, with like sing-alongs with kids or with anyone, right? Where you teach people the chorus by, da 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 da, and crab bakes cakes, da 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 da, and crab bake, right? Like I'm sure you've probably noticed this in doing some of the read-alouds of this book, and it's great because it's fun and you get to throw to the audience to provide that, and crab bakes cakes. But also what that does is kind of integrate that expectation that's going to continue. So when you stop it again, it's more devastating. I mean, sometimes I feel like a monster, and I am. And thinking this way about how to build a picture book is by using structure and by using time manipulation and by using sequence manipulation is something that comics does really, really well, and does over and over again, because the whole thing of comics is creating meaning using sequence and manipulating time. And this is going to be my brief like comics TED talk through here, but there's so many brilliant and beautiful ways that comics can break down and accelerate and deaccelerate the reader's eye through the page, to change the perception of time and to change like how certain moments of meaning or wonder hit. It's definitely something that they do very, very well. Cartoonist Tom Gauld, the Scottish cartoonist, once said that he thinks comic superpower is the ability to bore people, which is, silly, but also it's kind of true. Like you can hold somebody's eye on the page for a really, 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 really long time and then slide something in. Or you can have two types of time occurring simultaneously on a page, like the all-in-one example of Gasoline Alley on the right? Like you're reading everything panel by panel by panel, but you're also reading it, as a page because your eye is seeing it at once. So I was absolutely thinking about moments of transition and sequence with crab cake and how that works, and how that works together to build momentum. You'll also notice there's moments of comics in the book too, especially once the trash appears, everything becomes like a very big double page spread. And then when the action starts picking up again, it's almost like the beat comes back into the book. And then I did that by using like a bunch of comics panels to start introducing quicker moments of transition and sequence. Other examples, Jillian Tamaki is amazing. And then there's the sequences on a page that don't have panels or page transitions that are just how your eye moves through a page, right? Like how dense it is, what's happening on it, your impression of action, of movement, of contrast, all of that. Like picture books, comics, all of that is doing the same exact thing. It's creating meaning using sequence and time manipulation. I'm going to speed through this. All right, so again, this is where I was with the book. I knew that I wanted to make the reef life very fun and colorful and full of activity, and then I wanted to stop it. And then I wanted to come back at the end. And it had to come back because of the fish's actions. I didn't know what those were going to be yet, but I wanted to bookend the book with these colorful spreads, like these colorful feelings of life. So in some ways, like I knew that, this moment was coming. So I made these moments supercharged with color and with activity. And it's, it's like the opening of Beauty and the Beast where, everyone pours into the town square. Like there's so much going on. So I wanted to make it really, really colorful and lively so that when this happens, you would really miss it. And it would really be devastating. And kids have noticed this in readings, like the texture of some of the paint changes, like the water for all the good scenes are done in watercolor. So there's kind of a transparency and light to them. Obviously the colors are different. And then with these, I'm using gouache, which is a more opaque medium. So there's just kind of an actual textural heaviness to everything. The pencil gets darker and chunkier and that, because I wanted to have more weight to those scenes. So again, like, compare and contrast, right? And the moments where things are are really bad are intentionally they're calling back to the times when things were good, right? Like it established, the beginning part of the book establishes this kind of rhythm of fish does this, fish does this, fish does this, etc. So when, you know, the refrain or whatever comes along of like fish doesn't do anything, fish doesn't do anything, fish doesn't do anything, it's a callback pointing out, you know, what we're missing, what's changed and what's different. This is also functioning as a spread where it's like all the fish are alive, just so you know, because it's not immediately clear that that is true here, intentionally so. I really wanted to kind of establish a moment of horror and then just stay with it, just to really feel it, and like take it in, because that moment is so large. And it's amazing to like read the book with kids the first time after it got published, because they immediately, like, the crowd goes silent and their eyes get big, and like, you know, they know what this feeling is. And this is what I'm trying to do when I make this book, is like, I wanted to express, like, I know what this feeling is, you know what this feeling is too, you've experienced it in your life, like, we're going to go through this together. The freeze response is also like a very common trauma response in response to disaster or other kinds of catastrophes, where like the body and the mind feel like there is no possibility of escape. So the best thing to do, there's no fight or flight, so the best thing to do is to freeze. So yeah, like going back to the idea of like disaster and trauma, like absolutely, this is a real big deal moment. And then when the color starts entering the book again, it's because the fish bring their bodies. The fish kind of are this little garden of the ocean that kind of come back together. And when they're together on the page, the color re-enters the story, basically. And so this is the great moment of mutual aid, of solidarity. Everyone is, well, it's one of the moments of solidarity, is what Crab does. And what I really enjoy like thinking about with this spread is that, what does Crab do? Crab makes a cake, and then Crab helps with the effort after that. But like the other fish take it up from there. It's not just Crab kind of like marshalling in and like saving the day, which is good because, oh, there's a typo here. The trash is still there, you know, like they are sustaining themselves and they are nourishing themselves and comforting each other, which is crucial and joyful and meaningful. And then they have to take action, right? So this is the second part of that equation, right? Like, what are we going to do? And at this point in the book, oh my God, everybody needs a joke. So there is this octopus raising its hand. And of course, it's going to be the octopus that comes up with an idea. Just a huge octopus fan of like octopus shenanigans and general kind of intelligence. And then I was trying to figure out, how do I end this? And this was actually a big deal. Like the book kind of almost didn't get published, or at least on the schedule that it was meant to, because it just kept going back and forth with the editor and agent and trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do? How can you address this problem? How does this work? And I asked for a lot of help with this. I reached out to my other cartoonists and illustrators and got their impressions, and I took all of that in. And at one point I was so frustrated, I sat down and just like made a bunch of thumbnails of possible endings. And one of them was this joke, which is Crab built an enormous aquatic catapult just to shoot the trash back into the human environment. And it felt very cathartic and it felt really right, but I was just joking around. But that ended up being the thing that like kicked the rest of the ending into gear. Like the fish, I knew the fish have to take action themselves. They can't wait for human rescue. The trash can't be left on the reef at the end of the book. And then going back to that catapult joke, that energy was great. And so that's how I got to the big justice spread that happens at the end of the book, right? And what I love about this action is that like the fish just do it. Like they don't ask for permission. And it's really fun to talk to kids about this. It's like, do the fish wait? Do they fish ask for permission to take any of this action? And the answer is like, no. They act, you know, to protect themselves. This spread is the mutual aid and the activism in action, right? Like, it's a great thing to ask, like, what does every sea creature do? Like, what are they doing together? Because they're all doing different things, but all, you know, within like this common goal. Clam, especially, you know, with the lack of arms, but incredible spirit, really representing there. And yeah, they're also, the energy of this spread is just really mad. Like they're mad, they're angry, they're scared too, but there's just this like, you know, anger that is fueling these little animals. And that's an important part of activism mutual aid too, right? Like these, like anger is information, right? It tells you when something has been trespassed against, when a boundary has been crossed, right? And that has definitely happened with them. Their entire community has been endangered. A reader once asked me, did the trash get dumped on purpose or was it by accident? Which is a great question, right? And for the purposes of this, like I think it's worth talking about how the intention doesn't even matter. Like the crisis is there and nobody is coming along to like help solve that. So then they have to take action afterwards. Which brings me to the third stage in the life of this book, right? Because there's the ideas that, you know, fueled it, and then there's the actual making of it, and then there's the reading of the book, which is what you all do with your students and with kids. And this is an interesting stage because at this point, like it's out of my hands. The book has its own life. I have, you know, moved on from it. And I am curious, like how people react to it and the conversations that come up from sharing it, which you all got to experience last year. And kids, you know, get this. Kids understand, you know, kindness. They understand injustice. They understand anger. They understand helping, right? They really do understand helping. I think one of my goals in making this book was really just to speak to the humanity of children, because kids in that equation are not just there to be protected and guided, they're also part of this conversation. We all need each other. Kids really get this. They are in this. They are not just by themselves, but by joining together and with other kids who are already doing the work, who have been doing the work. These are some examples of child activism, gun control, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protests, global warming, right? Kids have questions, kids have concerns, kids have fears already, right? And involving them in that conversation, inviting them into that conversation, just it brings you into this space that's really, really special, where you are not, you know, leading, but you are together and you are learning and the giving and taking at the same time, right? And I want to return to that book that Rebecca Solnit wrote, which talks about the pleasure and the joy of this kind of endeavor, right? Like the feeling of doing this, which I would bet good money all of you have experienced at some point in your life, especially, you know, after this year. The pleasure of it, the joy of it, the meaning of it, to come together and and help each other, and not just to help each other, more importantly, to need each other. It's just such a powerfully human thing. It's a natural thing, and the fact that it is joyful is a sign that I think all of us kind of crave this kind of connection and meaning making. It's something that we do naturally, right? I was really inspired by the fact that climate activist Greta Thunberg, you know, who is incredibly passionate and very, very politically clever and very uncompromising about climate change activism, also talks to the value of friendship. Like she has made some lasting friendships with other global climate activists throughout the world. And she talks about how it's one of the best things that has come from it. She's found friendship and meaning, community through these efforts, and other people have too. That human connection, it's powerful stuff, yeah? I want to end with a quote by Rabbi Monica Gomery, which is just, I think, like a lovely way to sum up the thesis of all of this, which is, because as the stakes get higher, as our world continues to change, we will need each other's kindness again and again. On Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Aryeh Lev told us that what we need is here. And today on Yom Kippur, I want to remind us that what we need is us. So thank you so much for letting me go on and on about this. Thank you so much for sharing this with your classrooms and your libraries. I really, really appreciate it. And I would be very happy to talk some more about anything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
That was amazing. So much, there's so much packed in that book. I already knew there was so much packed in that book. Now I just, that's all I can say.
We all care very deeply about stuff, right? Which is a very inarticulate way of saying that, but yeah, right? Like, you all would not be doing the work that you do if you didn't care deeply about all of these things.
And again, that's what I love about the book, is there is a weight to it, even though it is also very light and it's very funny and it's goofy, but there is a weight to it, but it doesn't feel too much. It doesn't feel heavy-handed. I'll be honest, when I first read it, I was waiting. I was expecting it to be more messagey.
Yeah.
In a way, and not that there isn't a message, but it's that sometimes that happens where it gets a little heavy-handed, and it didn't feel that way to me. And I was like, yes, it didn't go there.
Well, thank you. It's that idea of like questions, like, I don't know if this will work, right? Like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. And, you know, I wish I had an answer for that, but if I did, I think I would be like some sort of magical being, you know?
Yeah.
So being able to be honest with kids about that doubt and that uncertainty and that like feeling feels like the only honest way to approach the question, honestly, because like otherwise I'll be lying to them, you know? I agree. And a lot of times that's the thing, is like, there's so many things that adults feel uncomfortable talking to kids about, but sometimes it's spun as like, well, kids don't want to talk about this because it makes them uncomfortable. And it's really, at the root of it, is a lot of times like, no, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes the adult uncomfortable talking to children about it. But children are there. They feel this, and they're, like you said, they want to be invited into the conversation. Yeah, they're already having those conversations amongst themselves or in their own heads, right? Yeah. But yeah, so like, yeah, there's something completely understandably just like heartbreaking about, as an adult, turning to children who will, you know, survive us and will succeed us, and talk about the stuff that we haven't fixed, that still we don't have answers for, that it's very, very hard. But like, you know, that's what being a human is, right? Like, we're all experiencing. Absolutely. But it's better to be like, hey, this is really messed up. We hope we can figure something out, rather than just like pretending like it's okay or ignoring what's happening. It's very hard to do. I really want to make space for that. Like, it's hard to do, just to also like get through your day and thinking about those stuff. So before this gets like really, really heavy, like, let's, does anyone have any questions or cats to show or anything about anything? I believe maybe Jennifer can help too. I believe we have some comments and some questions in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, so if you have questions, you can pop them into the chat, or you are welcome to turn your camera on and just say them with your mouth. Somebody has their hand up, and I can't tell who that is at the moment. Oh, okay. Is it Kara?
Oh, Kara. Okay.
It's me. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much. Wow. Woo! I wrote down so many of the wonderful things that you said. I too firmly believe that picture books are amazing tools for humor and honesty and social activism. And I'm wondering if you have some future projects that are in the works that you're at liberty to chat with us about. Maybe.
Excellent.
Oh my God. Remember when I shared that like the beginning stage of, thank you so much. The beginning stage of a book is like the messy, like
Yes.
sweatpants stage of making a book. Like I'm in that right now with a book, but I can't, I have nothing to share. Unfortunately, that would be coherent. But I have a book that just came out that I'm really excited about, which I have somewhere here. It's written by Jarrett Dapier. It's sorry, Mr. Watson's Chickens by Jarrett Dapier, and I illustrated it. It's like a crazy, again, it's like cacophony of crazy chicken problem about these this couple who have 456 chickens, which it's like a little too many, like a tad. So I'm really excited about that because it's great incidental queer representation. It's super silly. Apparently a lot of people have chickens out there that have like come out and like joined us in this conversation since then, which is always fun to hear about.
Well, this is Vermont, so lots of us have chickens, you know.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to grab that. Thank you. Cool.
I think in Vermont, either you have chickens or you're thinking about getting chickens. That's where you are. I'm in the thinking about it zone.
Oh, okay. The funny story, the author, Jarrett Dapier, who's this wonderful librarian from Illinois, Googled himself and the title of the book right before the book came out. And so his name is Jarrett Dapier, and like the first results were just pages and pages of chicken diapers. All of these ads. There's a whole market that we didn't know about that exists. Some of them have tutus, some of them have bows and ribbon. It was impressive.
I mean, I'm not actually surprised.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. And the secret, not secret, but the beginnings, the sweatpants of the beginnings of the book. That's exciting. I like that description too.
It's very accurate. You know, it's like the college student pajama pants padding around eating the ramen stage. Cynthia, I hope your fourth grader feels better. Thank you so much for both of you joining us today.
It looks like we have another hand raised.
Yeah. Do you mind?
Yes.
Hi. So I was really interested in you talking about your inspirations in like graphic novels, and I wondered if you ever thought about doing a longer piece of work. Or if you consider yourself like just a picture book writer.
No. I mean, it's really, thank you. It's a really great question. I have always loved both, like, you know, as a child, as an adolescent, as somebody who just like kept visiting the children's section of the library and kind of wondering if that was okay. Loved picture books and loved comics just equally. And in my head, they're kind of the same thing. Like they're basically the same thing. There are differences with some of the way the medium breaks down and genre and like the tools that you use. But I kind of think of the work that I do as all that same stuff. And to be honest, like the way I got started telling stories is through indie comics, you know, making zines and indie comics and going to cons and doing that kind of thing. So yeah, the sweatpants thing that I'm working on right now is a graphic novel that I want to move forward. But it's really funny because there's this really interesting learning curve when you're changing between categories, right? Like I experienced this when I did the I'm On It with the Elephant and Piggy Love Reading series. Like the difference between picture books and early reader is really fascinating. Like picture books are a little bit more like poems, and the early reader is really much more about, it's almost like a play. Mo Willems was really, really nice and really, really knowledgeable, obviously. And he was saying, like, you know, it's the first time that a kid can take, like, picture book is usually read to a kid, and early readers, you know, they read it themselves. And so it's a different kind of energy and a different kind of artistic experience, right, for them to engage with it versus the other thing. It's so different and fun and nerdy, very nerdy.
Awesome. I'm super psyched that you're working on a graphic novel.
These are great.
Let me see. Someone wants to know more about octopus shenanigans.
Okay. Brilliant question. Always happy to talk about this. So octopuses, I think is the plural, incredibly intelligent creatures, right? Like studies have been shown that each of their arms have a kind of, basic intelligence that's separate from their brain. So like the left arm does something that the right arm doesn't know that it's doing, literally. They can camouflage themselves as incredibly like different creatures. There are all kinds of, like the canon of octopus YouTube videos is mighty and extensive of, octopuses like stealing underwater explorers' cameras or hiding in coconuts, or the example I showed was this octopus that like staged like an Ocean's 11 escape out of its tank. There was an octopus that like any intelligent creature in captivity gets bored, right? Like there have been octopuses that have been like juggling, they've been caught in aquariums like juggling the oysters and other creatures that live in their tank, or rearranging it to suit themselves. There was one octopus that crawled to the top of its tank and was like squirting water at either a generator or a camera or something. And so like there kept being these power outages in the aquarium that were unexplained and mysterious. It was this octopus just like
yeah, it's incredible. That. Yeah, someone mentioned the movie My Octopus Teacher. Have you seen that?
I have not. I have a long TB watch.
Yeah, it's incredible. It has a lot of those same things that you're talking about, of just like really, but this person really, like this diver, like building this relationship with this octopus of just like visiting day after day after day and visiting, and like slowly like building this relationship and seeing all these behaviors that had never been witnessed before, and it's amazing.
This reminds me of a really good question I got from a first grader at Lansdowne Elementary School, which was, I think I said something, I was reading Crab Cake to the class, and I said something like, I was talking about global warming and the bleaching of coral, right, and the Great Barrier Reef. And I said something like, and that's sad. And he raised his hand and was like, why is it sad? And it was like, that's a great question. And, let's talk about that, right? Like, why is it sad that we might lose something that is all the way across the world, right? Like, why is it sad that, why should it matter, right? Like, it's a great moment to kind of like talk about like what, you know this, I don't have to tell you this, like the questions the kids ask are so brilliant.
Hannah, do you have your hand up for a question, or was that from before? I just want to make sure we don't miss you. I want to say, hold on, I'll turn my camera on for one. I don't have a red shirt today. So I love crab cake. I was crab cake's biggest advocate. and started a movement in our little committee. My favorite part of picture books is when the illustrator throws in these little snippets that really stand out and make you laugh. And the one that I always remember from Crab Cake, I actually had it as my cover photo on Facebook for a little bit, when, yeah, I liked it that much, is when the mom crab is talking to the little crab. Well, where did you leave it? And he doesn't have the shell, and he's just left it. And I'm like, I'm relating to this little crab so much. Like, that would have been me and my mom, like me losing my shell somewhere and my mom being like, oh my God. So the humor like that really, and you don't notice it right away. You really have to like look and absorb it. So I love stuff like that. You did that so well in this book. There's another book I'm thinking of where it's a huge scene of people in like a park or something, and it's just all different diverse types of people. And there's a man selling balloons, and there's this little boy holding a balloon, and it's like flopped over onto the ground. It's not floating up anymore. And he's like, what's going on? So little things like that reminded me of the crab who lost his shell. So love it. Love it so much. I love your book. I actually have, so this is, if you haven't seen I'm on It. Oh, yeah. I did pull that one out from before. So this is one of the in the Elephant and Piggy like reading early readers section. So Kirk has starred. Congratulations, guys.
Thank
so if you haven't picked this one up yet, think about it.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions or comments? Doesn't look like it at the moment. So I'll do my thank you. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been a real pleasure. Congratulations on winning the Red Clover Book Award. Huge honor. Our Vermont kids are very discerning. So the fact that you got their vote is really special. I think anybody here could tell you that. And Jonathan, I'll let you finish up here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Really inspiring, I think, in a lot of ways. I think a lot of folks are, you know, especially people who really love picture books, who work with kids. It's to see the power of it, and then also I think where a lot of us have these like constant ideas and like drawing pictures, and it's inspiring to see, you know, how you can make that come to life.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. This whole thing is just a gigantic honor. I'm really, really, really grateful that you all like read the book and talked about it. Really, like it's huge. Thank you very much.
Andrea,
yeah,
can
thank you so much.
Your new book one more time with the chickens?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Look.
Can you all see this? I'm going to scooch back a little bit. It's Mr. Watson's Chickens by Jarrett Dapier and illustrated by me. It just came out from Chronicle like a few weeks ago. And it's just like crazy chicken time. Yes. Mr. Watson and Mr. Nelson love each other very much. And they have a bit of a problem with too many ridiculous chickens. Where is the, right, yeah, there's like a whole Where's Waldo spread at some point.
That's amazing. That's
a lot
really
of
great. We're really excited about that.
I can't wait until we get that one in the office.
I know.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and everyone joining so early this morning as well.
Thank you so much.
It's early. Thank you, Andrea. We hope you have a good rest of your day, and keep making beautiful stuff for us. We're all rooting for you.
Likewise. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.
Everybody, it's 10:10. So the first thing on our agenda that I had up briefly before I had to take it down again was just to go over some of the materials that are on the Red Clover page on the Department of Library website. So I wanted to do that briefly, and then we'll, you know, get into introducing the committee and all of the nominees for this year. So it was in the link to this page was in the email I sent out yesterday, but it's easy to find on our website. This is the Red Clover Book Award page on the Department of Library's website. You will find almost everything you need to do this program in your school. We have the list of nominees that have the lovely annotations that our committee wrote. If you want to have a quick synopsis of all of the books. We have a bookmark template that you can print out. This is a ballot that you can use in your classroom to collect votes from the kids. There will be a web form for voting, as there has been for the last several years. This is just for in-class use, but somebody, I might have made that one this year. Probably stole a template from somebody though. Hey, get out of my way, thing. How do I get this out? All right, I'll just do this. Our lovely committee presented at Dynamic Landscapes in the spring, and we have their Google Slides presentation if you want to take a look. It will be similar to you know, what you're going to see today, but they did a really nice job, so I wanted to shout them out in this presentation. There is a form to order labels for all of the book award books, not just Red Clover, for Vermont Golden Dome and Green Mountain. If you just complete this form, it goes directly to my email, and I send out mail on Tuesdays and Fridays. So there's usually a pretty quick turnaround on these. These are free, so don't worry about sending us any money or anything. And then for today's conference, these will be moved up to this, you know, a little bit later. Our committee did just an outstanding job on the Educator's Resource Guide, also known as the Handbook. It is really, a very
really good stuff.
Very long PDF, but filled with excellent stuff. So we last year was the first year we made a handbook similar to what has always been done for Golden Dome. So we sort of combined those two things together, and also taking some of the materials that the Vermont Center for the Book, when they administered the award, used to have in their handbook. So we're really thankful for that. So I just want to run through this really quickly. Table of contents, you all know what that is. Just a brief description of the guide and of the award, how the nominees are selected, what the committee does, how to participate in the program, and then a section about promoting the program in schools, the public library, using technology for your program. And then it goes into all the specific entries for each of the nominees for this year. Every entry is set up the same way. You'll have a summary of the book. You'll have big ideas, overarching questions, some text-dependent questions, and then all of your curriculum connections for different subjects. We don't have a separate arts activity section this year. They are all incorporated into the handbook. MC Baker, who used to do our art activities, her time in the committee has actually ended. She has retired and is enjoying her nice, well, committee retirement in any case. But we still do have some art connections throughout these entries. Then you'll find author and illustrator information, and then companion books. So like, if you like this book, you like this, and if you wanted to do a unit or something, books that you can pull out. So there's one for all of this year's nominees. And then after that, just some general picture book information. If you want to just do a basic picture book, intro to picture book little unit with your kids, talking about text, illustration, how books are designed. We have an awesome glossary back here. And then we have some templates if you want to share the program with your local newspaper or for your school newsletter. So again, kudos to the committee for all, they wrote all of the entries for the nominees for this year. Did an awesome
We really
job.
hope that you'll use it. It's a really fantastic resource that has a lot of really great stuff in there.
Jonathan and I were reading through it, and we were just really impressed with everything that the committee came up with this year. It's a real collaborative effort.
It is. Which
is wonderful. And then, well, the last thing I'll show you. So our committee member, Liz Zwick, who couldn't be with us today, she writes writing prompts for us every year. So she has 2 writing prompts for each nominee. So for example, here's one from all the way to the top. So these live in a Google Drive that's linked on our website. So this writing prompt is asking kids to write to their local representative or to one of our representatives in Congress to talk about an issue that particular kiddo wants to see change. So this gets kids writing and thinking about the book in a different way, applying some of the lessons that they learned. Again, there are 2 for each book, so you're welcome to print these out and use them with your kids. And then finally, we have the list of all of our past winners here. And then this Excel document, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to open that. It's going to ruin it. It's every book that's been ever nominated since the award began in 1996, 1997. So if you want to go back and look at that, I think you'll see there have always been high quality picture books nominated, but I think the list has definitely transformed a little bit over the past years in a really good way. So that is what is on our website. I hope you will use all of this stuff. Next week, we'll have the recording of the conference up on this page. We will have this PowerPoint presentation we've been using, and we will also have a more formatted list of the honor books, or the books that almost made the list. I'm going to try and throw that up here as well. So I am going to bring this PowerPoint back up. I'm going to just throw this up on the screen for a second. So our committee is just dynamite this year. We're going to let them really introduce themselves. But Abby, Kelly, Kara, Hannah, Diane, other Abby, Leaf, and Liz have just been amazing to work with. And I think you're really going to enjoy their presentations today. And of course, my esteemed colleagues, Jonathan and Wendy, are always great as well. So without further ado, I'm going to have the committee, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, first of all. If I can do that. What's going on here? Here we go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to invite our lovely committee to turn their cameras on and unmute themselves. And I will just I'll just say your name to pick on you, and you can say, you know, what library you're from, how long you've been on the committee, all of that sort of stuff. But I will start with Jonathan, if you want to just briefly introduce yourself.
So I am Jonathan Clark. I am the Youth Services consultant, the Vermont Department of Libraries, and I have had the pleasure to work with this fantastic group of folks, the Red Clover Committee, and I am really excited for them to share books with them. They are really dedicated. This is a really, it is an extra thing for the committee on top of all the 100 other things that they're all doing. But they are really dedicated and really have put heart and soul and everything into this. So we're really appreciative of everything that they do.
Awesome. So after, I'll say after the committee introduces themselves, I'll have Jonathan do, you never did your little intro spiel. So we'll do that, and then we'll go into the list. So who's first on my list here? Leaf, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Leaf Perry. I'm K4 school librarian at Morristown Elementary School in Morrisville. And this is my second year on the committee. And I'm really excited about this year's list and working on next year's list.
Awesome. Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Boudelier. I'm the literacy coordinator at Charlotte Central School, former classroom teacher, and this is my first year on the committee.
And also shout out to Kelly for, like, she's holding down her whole school today too. There's a lot going on, and she's here still at the Red Clover conference. So props to you.
Awesome. Quick note, if you aren't on the committee, can you turn your camera off, please? Thank you. Diane.
Hi, I'm Diane Grenko. I'm the youth librarian at the Judavine Library in Hardwick. And I think, can this be my third year? Maybe it's only my second year. I don't know. Okay, it's my third year.
Who knows? Time flies when you're having fun. I hope.
That's true.
Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Field. I am a pre-K through 6 librarian at Neshabie School in Brandon, Vermont. And I think I joined at the same time as a big group of people, and we all this is our third year because we've made 2 lists together. And so this will be our third go around.
Awesome. Abby Johnson. We have 2 Abbies. We have to distinguish.
I am the Youth Services Librarian at the Cobley Public Library in Lyndonville. And yeah, this is my third year. I was part of that big group that came in. And thank you for clarifying that because I wasn't sure either, second or third.
Okay, Abby Adams.
Hi, I'm Abby Adams, and I am the Library Media Specialist at Shoreham Elementary School, and I'm also the Library Director at the Platt Memorial Library in Shoreham. So Librarian of all of Shoreham is my unofficial title. And this is my first year on the committee, and I'm thrilled to be part of this group and really diving into all of this exciting work.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Kara Klopton.
Thank you. I'm Kara, and I am the pre-K through 2 librarian in Williston at Allenbrook School. This is my third year, so I jumped in with the big crew, and we've had 2 years now of virtually presenting. So this is funky. Thank you all for being out there in funky wonky land, and you're going to have a great time for the next 45 minutes or hour or so, because we picked some fabulous stuff, didn't we, people? Yes. Yeah, we totally did. So stick with us. I wish that we could hug you in real time. It's going to come back. I promise. The hugging, the high-fiving in real time. Just know that your kids are going to want to hug these books and hug you.
Thank you so much, Kara. And then Wendy, I don't know, Wendy Martin, who was the steward of this award for years and years and years. Here she is.
I think I was a stewardess, wasn't I?
A stewardess. Okay.
I know we're not supposed to say that, but you can say flight attendant too, because I was flighty at times. Anyway,
Wendy, do you want to talk about what you do?
Yes. After being with the Vermont Center for the Book for 1,000 years, I am now with Vermont Humanities, which is now home to the Vermont Center for the Book, and so happy to see all of you. I kept looking at the participant list to see all of your names because there are so many that I recognize. It's so great to see all of you. So go ahead.
Thank you, Wendy. And I am a disembodied voice, Jennifer Johnson. I am the Library Advancement Assistant at the Department of Libraries. So I work quite a bit with Jonathan on all of our youth services programs, and working on the Red Clover Book Award is one of my favorite things to do because I love picture books so much. And getting to touch all of the ones that come in has been amazing for the past 5 years. All right, so before I pull up the PowerPoint and we get into the nominees for this year, for those who are new to the award, Jonathan is going to talk a little bit about what the award is all about briefly, and then we'll jump into the nominees for this year.
Okay, so this is all, Jennifer showed you that the amazing website, the site that has all sorts of great resources. Please go there. I'm gonna do a really quick speed version of this, but we know that there may be some of you that are joining us for the first time. Welcome, who may not know as much about Red Clover. So the Red Clover Award program is a children's choice picture award designed to foster awareness, understanding, and appreciation of the picture book. The award encourages readers to enjoy explore and discuss the pictorial, narrative, and design elements of the picture book in order to sharpen critical thinking, communication skills, heighten appreciation of literature and the visual arts, and nurture enthusiasm for reading and promote lifelong learning. The Red Clover Award was created in 1995 by Windham County Reads, quickly went statewide under the leadership of Mother Goose Programs / Vermont Center of the Book. Shout out to Wendy. For over 20 years, the Red Clover Book Award became a keystone in elementary literacy programming in schools and libraries. The award is currently under the auspices of the Vermont Department of Libraries, and the department is committed to upholding the award's reputation as a brilliant celebration of picture books and the wisdom of children to select the very best, like crab cakes. How amazing was that? A little bit about how to run the program. All students in kindergarten through 4th grade, including students who are homeschooled, may participate in the Red Clover Book Award program. Children are eligible to vote if they read or heard a read aloud of at least 5 of the books from the list. Students will vote for their favorite in the spring of 2022. We expect the vote to take place in May, and as it gets closer, we'll send out more information about that. And the materials, they were all published in 2020. We encourage schools and libraries to purchase the books on the list. We also were able to give away some, which we'll talk about later, to attendees, which we're very excited we were able to do that. That is pretty much it. Again, we will begin after we'll talk a little bit more about getting books to you for those who attended. And that is the basic overview. And I want to give it over to the committee so that they can talk about all of our amazing books for this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. And you'll find that sort of history of the award and all of that kind of stuff is also in the handbook. So you can go back and refer to that if you need to. I'm going to pull this up. Here we go. So we're going to get into the nominees for this year. So the list has been out for a while, but we hope that by hearing about the nominees from the folks who selected them, you'll get just a deeper and better understanding of these titles. And you can share the enthusiasm that the committee has for them with all of your lovely students. So the first book on our list, it's by alphabetical order by author's last name. That's the rhyme and reason to the presentation, is If You Come to Earth by Sophie Blackall. Here's a picture of our author illustrator in the cover of the book. And our committee member Leaf is going to talk about this title. Take it away. Uh-oh, we got a frozen Leaf. Here we go. And aha, perfect.
Okay, we good? All right, so the book starts off, Dear Visitor from Outer Space, if you come to Earth, here's what you need to know. And it gets into all sorts of things. It's first you're zooming in from space, because who knows where this visitor is coming from. And you can assume nothing that they know is about Earth, you know. And so they have all different kinds of homes that are shown, even allowing space for people that don't have homes. It shows all different kinds of people and emotions. There's just so much in this book. Transportation is covered all the way from hot air balloons to ice skaters to mopeds. Everything's in there. I don't know how she was able to think about all the things that make up our planet and include them in this book with all these illustrations. The diversity of the people, the different types of people, everything's in it that you can think of. Even the animals. Some of the illustrations are very complex, while others are very simple. I love the text that says, it's better when we help each other, and what better place to show for that than a library, right? The most helpful places on Earth, at least in my opinion. The character that narrates the story is seen throughout the book, and you learn the character's name either in the author's notes or also at the end of the letter, it's signed, Love, Quinn. So there are a lot of different things that we could do with this book. There's also questions at the end of the letter in the postscript, things like, how many eyes do you have? Are you small or big? Do you have any pets? And so one thing that you might want to do with this book is to have your kids write back to the visitor from outer space, write back to Quinn as the visitor from outer space. They could either create everything themselves, or they could take inspiration from the illustrations on the book that are underneath the dust jacket. So there are a couple different animals or aliens that are shown, and they could pick one and write back as that character, or they could create their own. I'm hoping to collaborate with my art teacher and having kids write the letter in library and then go to the art class to actually make a really nice illustration of their alien. Now, some of you might be a little hesitant about reading it aloud. It is 80 pages and there is a lot in these illustrations, but we have had lots of people read this to classes already and have great success. Some people have chosen to do it all in one class and have even included an art project within that class. Other people are taking 2 classes so they can really discuss everything that comes up. So you have a lot of choices to make if you're just going to let the kids lead the conversation, or if you want to choose things to talk about. And if you're still a little bit nervous, take a look at Sophie Blackall's video that we linked in the resource guide. She reads the whole book in 10 minutes and 15 seconds. So that's doable for anybody. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Leaf. Jonathan and I were just talking about how we've never taken off the dust jacket to look at those, look at the aliens underneath.
Those illustrations are amazing. I never saw those.
Well, that's something that I try to look at least for the red clovers, because so many times there's something hidden under there that you wouldn't know about.
That's really, that is true. I hadn't seen it for that book.
And
thanks for sharing.
Some of them are really intricate, and I've got 3 more to show, or 2 more to show today. So
excellent.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leaf.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to this next book, which is Above the Rim, How Elgin Baylor Changed Basketball. Our author is Jen Bryant, pictured here with her puppy, and our illustrator is Frank Morrison, here working on an art piece. So one of our newest members, Kelly, is going to talk about this book for us today.
Oh, you're muted, Kelly.
Thank you, Jonathan, as if we haven't been doing this for 2 years already. So I feel especially lucky to be sharing Above the Rim this morning after Andrea's keynote. There were so many connections about the things that she talked about in this book, and particularly when they mentioned Georgia Gilmore as an example of a heroic individual who maybe isn't highlighted as often as others that are well known. I made some connections to the story of Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor was born in 1934, just outside of Washington, D.C. Elgin became a very famous, very accomplished NBA player who had some profound impacts on how the NBA interacted with the Jim Crow laws that they were encountering as they traveled throughout the country. I'm not going to go too much into his biographical information because we do have a great short video to share, but I have to read how the author described Elgin Baylor's impact on basketball. She said, Elgin Baylor did for basketball what Picasso did for visual art, what Martha Graham did for dance, and what William Carlos Williams did for poetry. He broke with tradition and ventured into uncharted athletic territory, altering the game profoundly and forever. He came to basketball late and, lacking any formal coaching or instruction before high school, created his own unique moves and shooting style. And that's just a little tiny bit of how beautifully Jen Bryant captures this story in words. It's written very lyrically. It starts, On a steamy summer day in 1945, a boy and his brothers played stickball in the street. All of the illustrations are these really powerful oil paintings. This is my favorite one right here. And the power of these illustrations combined with sort of the lyrical nature of the words. In one smooth move, like a plane taking off, he would leap higher and higher and higher, as if pulled by some invisible wire. And just when it seemed he'd have to come down, no. Really, really powerful images and prose in this book. Interwoven with the story of Elgin Baylor, we see some of the more well-known civil rights activists and things that happened during the civil rights movement. And here we see Elgin Baylor being an activist by sitting down. And the author says sometimes you have to sit down to stand up, and that's what Elgin did. For students who pay attention to sports currently, as we're seeing more professional athletes use their platform to advocate for human rights, I think there will be some really wonderful connections that can be made with this book. Another page where the author's prose just feels really powerful. In one smooth move, like a plane taking off, he leaped higher and higher and higher, as if pulled by some invisible wire. And just when it seemed he'd have to come down, no, he'd hang there, suspended. Once we get to the end of the book, the author does a really beautiful job being a mentor for maybe some of our older students who are starting to work on what it's like to be a nonfiction writer. There's a really well-crafted author's note, some further reading, really nice notes that cite very clearly when something was paraphrased within the book, and a really well done timeline talking about Elgin Baylor from birth through some of his latest accomplishments. Unfortunately, the world lost Elgin Baylor in 2021, but this book celebrating his legacy came out, I think, at just the right time. So I hope that you will enjoy sharing this with your students.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
And a special kudos for your first ever Red Clover book spiel. Congratulations. Very well done.
Excellent.
Let me pull up this thing again. So Kelly mentioned a video. I think we're not going to have time to talk about it today, but it will be, it's in this PowerPoint that we'll share. ESPN has a really nice, about 4.5, 5-minute video talking about Elgin Baylor's career. It's more about his basketball rather than his activism. It is NBA who made the video, but I think it's a really nice overview of his life and legacy. He was really beloved also by fellow basketball players. He's one of those guys who across teams, he was very beloved by everyone that he played.
I did share an article about Kobe Bryant talking about Elgin Baylor.
Yes, and you can find that in the chat. All right, so our next title is The Barnabas Project by the Fan Brothers. I think the one unique thing about this, usually I think it's just Terry and Eric who make books, but we have the addition of Devin, who I believe is on the very right in that photo, to this book. And our lovely Diane is going to talk about the Barnabas Project today.
Thank you. So this is the Barnabas Project, and like JJ said, it's by the Fan Brothers, Terry, Eric, and Devin. They're from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's the richly illustrated story of a little hybrid mouse elephant named Barnabas, and it starts off the beginning here with all of the file folders for the failed projects. And then I think this might be my favorite illustration in the whole book. You probably can't see how excellent it is and luminous. However, so it starts off with the above ground city and the perfect pets shop. Below ground is the eerie, dark underground lab where the pets are genetically engineered. Barnabas and his friends are labeled failed projects, and they are living in the dark in bell jars. Thanks to a friend of the underlings, a cockroach named Pip, they learn about the world above. Stories about a sparkling silver lake, green trees, and mountains that reached all the way to the sky, lit with their own stars. Word comes down that they're going to be recycled, and they decide to make an escape as a team. So they have to go through all these pipes, which is easier for some than others. The men in green suits come. It gets a little harrowing right there, but they make it out. And when they get out, they emerge into the perfect pet shop, and Barnabas sees Barnaby, the perfect pet that he was supposed to be but didn't turn into. When they get out, they realize that the world is bigger and brighter than they could have ever imagined. It ends happily with them all together. They have each other and they don't need to be perfect. I love a story about misfits, and that's what this is. I also like this book because none of us are perfect, just like the hybrids, and we all need to know that that's okay. It's also a strong point of the book that the group of friends cooperate with each other and stick together. My favorite thing, though, is definitely the illustrations. They're, as I said, luminous and beautiful, and the animals are little sweet things and quirky. And it's kind of fun to look at the failed projects and see what combinations they were going for. And after what Leaf said, I realized I had never looked at the actual cover of the book underneath the jacket, and if only I could wrangle this out of here, I would show it to you because it's pretty great. It's you'll have to look at it for yourselves, but it's drawings, little scientific drawings about how they were coming up with the hybrids. And that is the Barnabas Project.
Thank you so much, Diane. That was awesome. Those pesky dust jackets we can't get underneath. Someone in the chat said they use Velcro for the dust jacket so that they can take it off and look at that, which is a really good idea.
That's a great idea.
All right, so the next book on our list is Honeybee, The Busy Life of Apis mellifera by Candace Fleming and Eric Roman. Let me see. Hang on. Oh. And Hannah is going to tell us about Honeybee this morning.
Yes. So this is Honeybee, The Busy Life of Apis mellifera.
Oh, we can't see you, Hannah.
Can you not see me? My camera's on.
Oh, I can see Hannah.
You can see me?
Maybe it's just me.
It's telling me I'm spotlighted.
Yeah, I spotlighted
okay.
you. Yeah, I can see you. I'm not sure about other folks.
Okay. So this book follows the life of a honeybee called Apis by Candace Fleming and Eric Roman from her hatching and through the many, many, many different jobs that she performs in the colony. There's a sense of tension that's built throughout the book by posing the possibility that the bee will fly each time she changes jobs, right? So it says soon she's ready for the next job. Will it be flying? And it's not. And again, it's not, as she shifts and shifts and shifts. And then when Apis finally flies, the moment is celebrated with this glorious gatefold. I can't fit it all on the screen. And the story follows that bee, Apis, all the way to the end of her life, a short 35 days after it began. Let's find that last page. There we go. And this part of the book totally makes me cry. almost every time I read it. And I think it's a really special thing about this book that it can put us so deeply connected with this life of a single bee that we would mourn its passing in that way. And the book ends with the hope of a new bee emerging into the colony. A great thing about this book is that they included really ample back matter. They have 4 pages of back matter, including this detailed anatomy of a worker honeybee, more information about the different roles that bees play in a colony, as well as information about the importance of honeybees as pollinators and the many challenges that they face with declining populations and ways that readers can help. The intimacy of this book is one thing that makes it super special. It brings us like up close and personal with honeybees in a way that is literally impossible in normal human life. And Roman's oil illustrations have such a careful attention to detail and such a warmth, despite the fact that this book like overwhelmingly takes place inside a beehive with like brown and black as the dominant colors. And the color shift that happens in the book from brown to blue is one of the things that makes the moment when Apis finally leaves the hive and flies so affecting. I'm super excited about the instructional possibilities of this book, and I think that we have some really great activities included in the handbook this year. Including some games about bees, some games about cooperation to get students moving around, some STEM activities, and also several suggestions for writing prompts. So I hope you guys love Honeybee as much as we do.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm not sure why I couldn't see you present, but I'm sure it'll be in the recording, so I'll have to go back and watch that one. All right, let me see here. So our next title is All the Way to the Top, How One Girl's Fight for Americans with Disabilities Changed Everything. Our author is Annette Bay Pimentel, who has been on the Red Clover list before. And our illustrator is Nabi H. Ali. And this book also features a foreword by its subject, Jennifer Keelan Chapins. The video in the PowerPoint that we're not going to watch today, but that you can go back, is there's actually a video of Jennifer climbing the steps. And Abby's going to tell us more about that story.
Okay, so All the Way to the Top also connects to Andrea really nicely in that this is a story of a child finding her voice and becoming an activist. So Jennifer Keelan Chapins, here she is in the illustrations, and then you also see her in the back of the book. I think it might be the same picture from that video still. Yep, here she is in real life in the Capitol crawl. So she became an activist at age 6 when she participated in her first protest. She was born in 1981 and diagnosed with cerebral palsy in 1983, at a time when access to public spaces for people with wheelchairs was definitely more limited. The book begins as Jennifer tries to attend kindergarten and just in her neighborhood school, and she can't navigate the high curbs and the stairs, and she's told she has to go to a different school. And at this other school, she's only allowed to participate in half of the day after lunch. And it's hard to fit in as a kid who's only there for half of the day, who's in a wheelchair, and some of the kids may have never seen somebody in a wheelchair before or know how to interact with her. And Jennifer knows she is just a friend waiting to happen. I love that line. And so she's not going to sit idly by. With her family, Jennifer meets members of a community group who are working on a protest to get wheelchair lifts included on public buses. And through them, she gets her first experience at a protest. And she is given the mic. It feels good for her to be able to do something instead of being told to stop, which has happened throughout her life so far. And there's a rhythm through the book where she's told stop, but stop. She's just getting ready to get moving. She's told to stop. She can't do it. Finally, when she's given the mic, it's go time. She is raring to go. So she starts attending protests all throughout the country and eventually heads to Washington, D.C. with her family to rally in support of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, being passed. And it has stalled. So there's a big protest plan, which culminates in a very thrilling moment in the book where the protesters leave their wheelchairs and they actually ascend up the steps of the US Capitol. And Jennifer wants to go too, and she is told, stop, you're too young. The organizers are worried that she's too young, and there's no stopping her. She says, I need to climb the steps. So she does. She makes it to the top. She becomes the subject of a lot of newspaper articles and photographs of the time, and it really helps move the passing of the ADA. So it's just a very exciting moment. I was really thrilled. I was just so excited when I read this book for the first time with how just gutsy and inspiring she was. So while it takes a while for the changes to come, and there's still a lot of work to do from the ADA, change has happened, and your students will be able to take a look around their libraries and their schools and even their homes and see the results of some of the pieces of this legislation. So ramps and wider bathroom stalls and braille pads on signs. And it would be a great activity to imagine what it would have been like without this legislation. So it's full of so much heart. I think your students will really respond to Jennifer just wanting to be like the other kids in her class and not being seen as her disability. And the text is really simple, but it's very bold. It just says a lot with not a lot of words. And the layout of the text. The illustrations by Nabi H. Ali are really bright and lush with color. And then the back matter I found really user-friendly. So it talks about what is a disability, access, laws, specifics on the Capitol crawl, what it is to be an activist. It also talks about life before and after the ADA, and then there's this really interesting timeline that shows Jennifer Keelan Chapins' life along with milestones of the disability rights movement. And you can read her writing on, she's active as a blogger and still as an activist. So she's a very current person that your students can connect with. And it's an empowering book. So I hope that you will enjoy this and that your kids will see the results of this story around them every day. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Abby. As a coda to that lovely presentation, so we have a collection of story walks available at the Department of Libraries now, and this is one I made for All the Way to the Top. So this is available for checkout. It's actually reserved for November now, but after that, it will be available. So you can put this up outside or in store windows around. We do have a story walk for this one. All right, let's pull this up here. So the next book on our list is The Little Mermaid by Jerry Pinckney. Here's Jerry Pinckney here. Probably you are all familiar with his work. He is prolific. And the other Abby is going to present The Little Mermaid for us today.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. I'm pleased to present The Little Mermaid, written and illustrated by Caldecott Award-winning author and illustrator Jerry Pinckney. And although the title of this story will be familiar to most students, this book is a reimagining of both the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale and the Disney interpretations. rendered in beautifully detailed colored pencil and watercolor. I'm going to try and do my best to show you these illustrations. They're so incredibly detailed. This book is really going to lend itself to presentation with a document camera, or I'm trying to make sure that you can see it. Okay, there we go. So that students can really see these detailed illustrations. And they're really going to immediately recognize Pinckney's characteristic style. This particular story has deep world building on the part of the illustrator. Each scene has detail and depth. And the back matter discusses the author's process of updating this classic tale, as well as his extensive research into the natural world for these illustrations. They're faithfully rendered and could easily spark oceanographic research in readers. The story begins with our little mermaid, Melody, and her three sisters, daughters of the Sea King. And Melody doesn't fit in. She's known for her beautiful voice, but she has no desire to sing with the choir of mermaids. She is instead obsessed with the relics of sunken ships and her invented stories about the objects she finds. Well, one day she follows a sea turtle up to the surface, breaking her father's rules. And Pinckney illustrates her dramatic ascension above the waves with pearl-like strands of water droplets, flying fish, and whales breaching. She spies on the shore a mysterious figure with two stick-like legs, and thinks immediately a friend. But before the meeting can go any further, she's pulled back down below the waves and sinks into despondency amongst her relics, wondering if the only friends she'll ever have would be imaginary. So this story is deeply about friendship. She feels so left out and unappreciated that she decides that going to the Sea Witch is a viable option to solve her problem. The Sea Witch, who was cast out and is forbidden from entering the mermaid's world. The Sea Witch is depicted in the skull of this toothed whale, and it's truly dramatic and frightening. I'm going to try and do a little close-up for you. And Melody strikes a deal. She's going to give up her most precious gift, her voice, in exchange for legs. So she travels to the surface, and she finally feels like this is where she truly belongs. The girl from the shore is waiting for her and welcomes her. The girl introduces herself as Zion and invites her to join her game of chasing butterflies. But Melody has no voice to answer, no way to communicate her name or anything else to build a friendship. But despite this, they play all day and feel a surprising kinship. And Pinckney reminds readers that friendship is not just about being able to talk to someone, and communication is more than speech. She draws in the sand, and Zion understands what happened. She's shocked that Melody gave up her voice and tail just to make friends. And she's reminded of a chrysalis in a jar, reminded of a butterfly. The transformation of the butterfly is linked to the transformation of the mermaid. She's a transformed explorer, but she admonishes Melody, you should never have given up your voice for anything, which is a really powerful statement for our students. I'm going to show you that butterfly. So suddenly the story changes tone, as do the illustrations. Melody hears in a seashell that her family is under attack by the Sea Witch, and she cries because she has to leave, but Zion understands and assures her she will always be her friend. So she dives beneath the waves to discover turmoil and battle. The Sea Witch's tentacles are wrapped around her father's neck, and she shouts, she grabs the seashell that has her voice and feels her own power rising, and she shouts, no! And the Sea Witch is defeated, the spell is broken, and Melody has discovered her true voice. So at the end, she uses this true voice to tell her family about her adventures, and they finally understand her a little better and her need to explore. The story ends with Zion releasing the butterfly from the jar to fly across the ocean to find its way to Melody. So at the end of the day, this story is a deep exploration of communication, the ways that we can communicate with each other to develop and deepen relationships, the power of one voice to stand up and say no, and of course, the importance of speaking your own truth to the people in your life. And in an era where student voices and student choices are at the forefront of our educational practice, this book is definitely going to resonate with young readers. So thank you for enjoying The Little Mermaid with me.
Thank you so much, Abby, and kudos to you on your first ever Red Clover spiel presentation. Congratulations. Awesome. All right, our next book on our list here is Facts versus Opinions versus Robots by Michael Rex, and here's Michael Rex here. And Hannah is going to join us again, who I can see this time, and tell us about the book.
Perfect. So I get to be the first repeat presenter. In Facts versus Opinions versus Robots, we meet a group of robots who help us learn the difference between a fact and an opinion. In a really conversational tone, the person reading the book asks their audience a bunch of questions about the robots that we see in the book, and it helps listeners understand the nuances of facts, right? Anything that can be proven true or false, as opposed to opinions, which is something they define as something you feel and believe, but you cannot prove. And at the end of the book, the message is super clear that we need to respect one another's opinions, but in the end, we can't and shouldn't argue with the facts. And the robots definitely have their struggles in coming to understand the need for respecting one another's opinions. And this is a book that is so much fun to read out loud, because the writing style is really conversational and it prompts your audience to respond to you as you read, and subtly, or maybe sometimes not so subtly, teaching them the difference between facts and opinions and reinforcing it over and over throughout the book. And it's a topic that we as teachers and librarians really do need to emphasize, because absent this basic ability, the information fire hose that's coming at us all day, every day, is impossible. And teaching further skills in media literacy really depend on this base understanding of the difference between what's a fact and what's an opinion. And we all know that plenty of people have a lot of trouble understanding the difference between facts and opinions. I think it's super powerful to use humor to teach this kind of essential information. My own 4-year-old has shown me, actually he's 5 now, my 5-year-old has shown me the effectiveness of this book as a teaching tool. And in an interview with Teaching Books, Michael Rex talked about how his idea for this book came from dinner table conversations with his own 2 sons, including figuring out whether the fact that, or the idea that broccoli is disgusting is a fact or an opinion. Personally, an opinion. Plus, robots are fun, right? Rex said that he always wanted to make a robot book in that same interview, and so he brought these ideas together. The idea of needing some kind of picture book that talks about the difference between facts and opinions, and also wanting to make a robot book to create this incredible work. And so there's lots and lots of different opportunities for projects that stem from this book. You can do more work on facts and opinions, of course, but there's also robot connections, right, for programming games and maker projects. And I hope you really like the ideas that we generated and shared in the handbook. And I'd love to hear your feedback about the ways that you use these books in your teaching. So I hope you guys love Facts versus Opinions versus Robots.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was awesome. And I want to echo that sentiment. We always want to hear how you're using these books in your classroom. You can always email Jonathan or myself, or talk to anyone on the committee. We are always collecting ideas and can definitely add to the handbook if some good ideas are generated. That is always a working document throughout the whole year. All right, so our next book is How to Solve a Problem, The Rise and Falls of a Rock Climbing Champion. It was written by the climber Ashima Shiraishi and illustrated by Yao Zhao. I want to show you two things actually before I hand it over to Leaf. This video by The Great Big Story, it's about a 2-minute video, is in the handbook. So it's a great thing to show your students to introduce Ashima. They can see her in action. And I'm gonna stop sharing this and turn my camera on. Our committee member, Liz, who couldn't be here today, actually brought this over to me the other day so I could show it. So Ashima was actually featured on a cliff bar. So here she is climbing. And there's a quote from her on the back. Oh, it's very like cliff bar centric, so I won't read it. But here she is, chocolate brownie flavored, and I may just eat it afterwards. Best by October 12th. Okay, well, I think it'll be okay. So Leaf, I am going to hand it over to you.
So I'm so glad you were able to get one of the Cliff bars because I ate mine months ago and I haven't seen them in the stores since. So yay, because Cliff is one of her sponsors, as well as North Face, as well as Evolve Shoes. She has been a professional climber for many years and she's only 20 years old right now. So how to solve a problem. Rock climbers like Ashima call boulders problems, and if anyone knows how to solve one, it's her. I also want to bring attention to the second part of the title, the rise and falls of a rock climbing champion. She hopes from an interview that the message that people get from this book is that you've got to stand up after each time you fall down. A very great connection if you're teaching anything about resiliency or just feel like your readers, your students, your patrons need to hear that kind of message. We also have another book coming up that has a lot about resiliency and taking care of things. But anyway, back to how to solve a problem. This story follows her as she applies the lessons of rock climbing more broadly to problems we may encounter in our lives. And what she likes to do is break things down into bits. And this particular problem that's featured in the main part of the book is actually in South Africa. It's when she was 13 years old, I believe, and she was trying to become the second woman ever to climb a bouldering problem of that level, of that magnitude. And so it was a really big deal. So as she was trying to work through it, she broke everything down into different steps and had different visuals, ideas that would trigger what she was going to do, because she had to move in specific ways and figure it out. She's also very small, so some climbers are really tall and have great reach, and she wasn't, and so she could only do so much, so she would have to figure out steps that would work for her. She eventually did conquer that boulder, that problem, after she had mapped it out and worked on it for a long time, for all sunlight hours of the days, for multiple days, even sometimes climbing at night with a headlamp. And I think readers will really relate to this. Even if they're not climbers, they can relate to it and think about how they can apply what she's learned to solving their own problems or having goals. It doesn't have to be a problem necessarily, but a goal in mind that you break down into steps that you can work on, that are doable, so it's not overwhelming as so many things are. I love how the illustrations turn for when she's falling, because it really emphasizes that's the big risk that she has, right, is falling. And she'll fall a great distance because this kind of climbing, you don't have a rope, but you do have a crash pad at the bottom waiting for you, hopefully with a person there to reposition it for you. Her father was usually that person. He's her mentor and coach. Her mother's also involved in her climbing. The pants that she's wearing and all the illustrations, and you see lots of different versions of them throughout the book, but especially in the end papers. Those pants are sewn by her mother. And Ashima also has a love for fashion, so that kind of comes through in this book as well. She's very inspirational, and you can see her ascent in her life, her short life, because she's only 20, and where she's been at. And this is where it talks about that, the problem featured in this book, where it was. And what happens next? She's got lots more goals. She's still climbing. She did attempt to compete in the Tokyo Olympics. This was the first year that the Summer Olympics had climbing as a sport. She did not qualify to compete. There were only 2 women from the US that were able to qualify to compete, but she's still climbing and she's still one of the best. She's become an author. She's also designed some climbing shoes, not these particular shoes, but she's designed some climbing shoes or helped to. And it's a fundraiser so that people that wouldn't normally have access to climbing could do just that. When she first started out in Central Park at 6 years old, she had a mentor there that guided her. And that's usually what happens. Either people have the money to hire someone or pay a gym or pay a guide, or they have friends that have gear and have knowledge, and you go along with them. So climbing is a really interesting sport. A lot of people do it. Not everybody, although a lot of us have climbing walls at our schools. If you look on the playground or sometimes in the gym, they have climbing holds. And so I think there will be a lot of opportunities, good connections that you can have with your PE teachers, or maybe in the public library setting, if you have a community playground that has a climbing wall. It would be a great place to perhaps read the book and have the kids show off their skills, because so many of them do love that stuff. This is one of those books that has a different art underneath the jacket. It looks like constellations, which are also in other parts of the book. So yes, so I think there's going to be a lot of fun connections that people can make, especially with making, because think about those clothes that her mom created for her just for this sport. When you're doing making design challenges, you're thinking about the user and what's going to be good for them. You could have kids design something either for themselves or for somebody else. You could have kids sewing. You could have people thinking about the different patterns. You could even just, if you have something like a cricket, you could cut out all sorts of pants of different patterns and have kids make their own climbers. There's a climber activity of making on the resource guide. I haven't done that one yet, but I did read about it. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And for me, I think this is, it brings it back and is going to hopefully inspire me to get my son climbing, because his parents have 2 climbers that don't really climb much anymore. So hopefully I'll dust off my shoes, grab my chalk bag, my harness, if it still fits, and we'll get out there climbing together again. Thank you.
And now's the demonstration part, right? You're gonna hop on that wall and demonstrate some bouldering for us?
Well, I couldn't go too far. I don't think you'd like the view that you would get if I climbed.
I just want everyone to appreciate the wall in the background, and it is real. It's not just a black. It's not a.
Yes, it's real.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leaf. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. So our last 2 books on the list are going to be presented by Kara. So the first one is Nana Akua Goes to School by Trisha Elam Walker, who's right here, illustrated by April Harrison, who's pictured right here. Here's the cover. And I'm going to have Kara take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone on the committee who's talked so beautifully and eloquently about the 8 books before me. Wow, what a powerhouse of a list that we have. The last 2 books I'm especially excited to talk about because they are books about unity and family, friends, and connection, things that definitely speak to my heart. This one right here, Nana Akua Goes to School, is a book that I treasure because I have some really strong feelings about my own grandparents, and there's a line that we hear again and again about being wrapped like a sweater by your grandmother, and I can feel that myself from my own grandmother back in Texas, that I just wish that I could get another one of those hugs personally. This is a story about Zura, who's right here, and during morning meeting one day, her teacher says, "Grandparents' Day is coming up. I'm going to invite you to have an opportunity, if you'd like, to bring your grandparent to school, and they can tell us what makes them unique. So me personally, as an anxious child, that would have made me think, oh my gosh, I've got to go have this conversation with my grandma or my grandpa, if I have one available, and tag them along. And Zura is in the same position, but for her, she's worried that the markings that are here on her grandma's face, her grandma's from West Africa, from Ghana, are going to be a source of not just an aha moment, maybe for some kids in her classroom, but maybe some kids are going to make fun of these markings that are on her grandma's face, or maybe they're going to stare at her or point at her, and maybe something uncomfortable will come up, or a conversation will come up about the person that she loves absolutely the most. Nana Akua has these traditional Adrinka tribal markings. They don't wash away. They might look scary to someone who's unfamiliar. And on the inside, on the covers right here on the inside, on the back, on both sides here, you can see that there's traditional Adinkra symbols and then different meanings for each of those that are illustrated so beautifully by April Harrison. And then it also tells you how you can say each of these with little pronunciation guides. And that's really helpful too, as you're coming along and reading through the book. And when she's having a conversation, Zura, with her grandmother, it says here, she feels that it's hard for her to explain to her grandma about the grandparents' day tradition that they're going to have in their classroom. And she's worried about taking someone that she loves so much, and worried that her feelings might get hurt. She swallows, she takes a deep breath. What if someone at school laughs at you or acts mean? And you can just see and feel the warmth right here. Nana Akua thinks for a moment. I have an idea. She puts Zura's arms through her. Together, they walk the hall to Zura's room. Nana points to the bed. How about we bring your favorite quilt to class? The quilt patterns come from another long ago tradition, even though they're not exactly the same as the marks on my face. They could help explain them. What do you think? So another piece of heritage and culture right here, these images that you see in the front and the back of the book have been stitched with love, and something that she curls herself up in all the time that links those maybe scary markings with this not so scary quilt, something that Zura can bring to class. So they decide that's exactly what they do. And both Zura and her grandma dress up in their finest outfits for the day. They bring along the quilt, and the other kids in the class that have a grandparent that wants to come and talk about what makes them special and unique, they get a chance. There's welcome signs, there's balloons in the classroom. And then this is absolutely my favorite page right here. I just want to talk to this woman right here. She just seems so honest and open and welcoming and loving. And right on this page, I've read this, I don't know how many times out loud to children, and they totally get it. She says to the kids and to the other grandparents in the room, these marks were gifts from my parents who were happy and proud that I was born. She continues, I'm likewise proud to wear them. Most Ghanaian parents don't celebrate in this way anymore, but it was once an important tradition. Then further, it's interesting, she says, that in this country, I often notice people who put tattoos on their body that have special meanings. And when I read this out loud to classrooms, the kids are like, oh yeah, connect. And so I can just see my classrooms full of kids doing that. This is such a great story about having those older and younger generations being able to connect together. And then thinking too about earlier what Andrea was saying, when you have those anxious moments and you have those questions that you can't just answer, and sometimes we don't know what to do with our big feelings, having a chance to really talk with one another, build that community with one another. You can see here that Nana asks if the other people that are in the classroom that day, if she would like to paint one of these images onto each of those people's faces, which of course is not something that we would do in our classrooms. That's something that would only be appropriate for someone from that particular culture to do. But you can see just how joyfully this is rendered right here. It would be fun, and what we did talk about in the handbook that we have is having kids think about a symbol or an icon they might want to create for themselves that would represent something that's important to them. I think that this book is definitely a story filled with heritage and tradition, and most of all of Akoma, which is heart. It wraps you right up in a hug, just like a sweater. I know that you'll enjoy Nana Akua Goes to School as much as my students have so far. The next book that I have, and it's the last one on our list, is I Am the Storm. And oftentimes we choose a poetry book to be on our Red Clover list. And we didn't specifically have a poetry book, but this one feels like it's the poetry book to me. It's absolutely lyrical, and it's a family type of story, not even, in that there's a family connection in how it's written, who it's written by, and there's a family weave all the way through. Jane Yolen and her daughter, Heidi E.Y. Stemple, are the people that put together all the wordage for us, which is glorious. I can't wait to read parts of this to you. And then Kristen and Kevin Hudeshell are husband and wife. So I Am the Storm has, the pictures are glorious. They blow me away every time I go through and think about all the different types of storms that they have. We've got, I'm going to start backwards, which may seem a little strange to you, but in this particular book, you've got 4 types of storms, and I personally have been through all of these. Tornadoes. I grew up in Texas, and I can't tell you how many tornadoes I've had to go through. Blizzards. Yes, living in Vermont, I know you've experienced that. Wildfires. Been through that in California. Hurricanes. Been through that in Florida. So I'm sure a lot of you have similar experiences with these. What's interesting about this is we can parallel those experiences, these kinds of storms, with those raging storms that we may have with our own emotions, and not being pushed down or oppressed by these natural things that happen. But what do we do when those moments of despair, as Andrea was talking about earlier, what do we do when those raging things happen? How do we respond as a community, as a family, as a group, to come together and calm that storm? So let's just take a look. What I love are all the deep, rich color pages that you see here. I feel like I'm jumping straight into each one of these pages. So how do we cope when the winds are howling and the snow is piling and the fires are raging and the rains are surging? We lean in on our family. When the lights go out, we make a fire, we cook hot dogs, we go and shovel Miss Garcia's walkway. I love that they're all circled up right here. It may be hard for you to see. We respond. We don't hide underneath the covers. We remember that when the sea, this page is, look at the purples. It just, oh, it makes me so happy. When the sea is swirling and roiling and rising almost into the sky, we remember that it's okay to be scared. And this is something that when I've read it with classes, I just echo it again and again. It's okay to be scared, not even just for little people, for big people too. Everybody feels that way. I feel scared sometimes more than once a day, and that's all right. It's all right to be in those moments. And also, it's wonderful to know that nature is strong and powerful, and you're strong and powerful too. Look at the stance of this young person and that rich, bold color on top of this fallen tree. It's natural. These things are supposed to happen, and we're a part of this as well. So beautiful. This is a poetic text. These moments of bonding and empowerment are beautiful reminders that we're all of those things too. You're loud like the tornado, wild like the blizzard. You're hot like the fire. You're fierce like the hurricane. You too are the storm. And when the storm passes, as it always does, I am the calm too. I know many of you practice mindful moments for yourself probably, and for members of your family. And I know that we do that in our classroom circles, in our classroom groups. You may even do that with your faculty groups. Practice some mindfulness and think about, what does that feel like? What does that feel like in your body? Where do you go to be in a mindful present moment and to feel that kind of calm that we all need? And this is my second favorite picture. It's okay to be scared, and it's okay to remind ourselves that we have to take the time to be calm and be fully present. And that's I Am the Storm. What a remarkable list of 10 books we have this year. Yeah, thank you for joining us on this journey.
Thank you so much, Kara. Those were 2 excellent book talks. And before I wrap up I Am the Storm, we also have a story walk of I Am the Storm, and this one is available. It hasn't been reserved yet. It was really fun putting this together. I think because of the bold colors that Kara was talking about, this will be a very dynamic walk if you want to put it up on your school.
I don't know if we already did. If not, Jennifer, in a minute, can you put in the link where they can reserve that, the story walks?
Yes, I can do that in 1 second.
Yep.
So we have about 30 minutes left. We had a Q&A scheduled for this time, but I think we should probably jump right into the honor books, and then at the end we can answer all your questions about the nominees and the honor books. Because we really want to leave you also with some other titles that are absolutely outstanding, but didn't fit into the list for whatever reason. Crafting a well-rounded list of books that will appeal to all different sorts of kids and represent the human experience, I guess, is an art, and the committee has done it so well this year.
And it is a real process. It's it's a real challenge, and but it's really great to see the committee really work through that. And again, it shows how much thought goes into the books that have been chosen. And again, the ones that are going to be highlighted now are the ones that were like this close. So there are also some really fantastic titles.
Yeah. All right, so let me just pull this up quickly here. So this first batch of books are all clustered together because these were presented during Dynamic Landscapes. These are going to be kind of shorter spiels, we call them, that's what I call them, than some of the other ones. But we'll just go through these really quickly. So I think Hannah is going to talk about Your Name is a Song by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow and Luisa Uribe.
Yeah, happy to do so. I was so excited that I get to talk about this one with a bigger audience here also. So I lived my whole life with a hard to pronounce last name. My last name's Field with a J in it. And this book really resonated with me in a super special way. It's about a young girl expressing her sadness and disappointment to her mother about how no one at school can pronounce her name correctly and how some kids even pretend to choke on her name. And her mother's reply is that all names have their own song, and that we can sing names and share them with music and from different parts of our body to help people learn them. And there are names from so many different cultures represented, and there are phonetic pronunciations throughout the text, which is really wonderful. And this book will help any child who's ever had this experience really feel seen. Reading it out loud the first time can be a little bit daunting because it's challenging to learn a new name on paper alone without having someone sing it for you, for example. But the phonetic pronunciations are there to support you. The author also created a video with pronunciations of all the names in the book, which goes along with the back matter that has an alphabetical list of glossary of all of the names featured in the book as well. So it's worth the time to prepare. And the illustrations, I think, are really special too. Luisa Uribe does the illustrations, and they really illustrate the musicality of the story and bring it to life, the way that the air swirls with the sounds of many colors all through the story. And as a personal aside, I'm a little bit of a clothing nerd, and I love to make clothes, and the outfits in the story were especially inspiring. I made my own pair of pants inspired by the mother's pants that she wears. So I hope you find the time to share Your Name is a Song with your students.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was awesome. So next, we'll do Your Place in the Universe by Jason Chin.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is Vermont author and illustrator Jason Chin. He's one of my favorites. And we start with a group of kids on Earth looking through a telescope. And then we go on a mind-blowing journey all the way out to the outer reaches of the universe by the time we get to the end of the book. And then we zoom back to, we go sideways, go out into space. And the way that he plays with scale in this book is just brilliant. So we go all the way out, as far as you can go, the cosmic web. He zooms all the way out and then back to the kids looking through their telescope. So he compares the kids. How many kids would it take to be as tall as one ostrich? How many ostriches would it take to be as tall as a giraffe? How tall is a giraffe compared to the largest living organism? And the illustrations, they're funny and kind of mind-blowing when you put these things next to each other. So it's a great STEM read. There's lots of opportunities for activities and discussions. It's just because of how he puts things next to each other. I feel like it's just really accessible and engaging. These really, really big concepts, like how far it really is from the Earth to the moon. So he helps us imagine those things. And I would love to put it with Sophie Blackall's If You Come to Earth as a from our Red Clover list. It's just as a way to compare different types of books about similar things and how authors might discuss similar things, but in totally different ways. And they just, both of these books like talk about the vastness of our world and the beauty of it. And there's extensive back matter. The text also, you can read it on two levels. There's the larger print and then smaller facts all throughout. So you can read it depending on how much detail you want to get into with your kids. And then lots of information in the back, lots of great resources and information that he refers to in the text. So have fun with this one. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Abby. Fabulous. I think next we will go to Leaf and Fauja Singh Keeps Going. There she is.
I'm back. Okay. So, I really liked this book. I was kind of sad that it didn't make the list, but we already had a lot of sports connections, so I totally understood, but still tried to fight for it for a while. What's especially good with this one is that many people doubted Fauja Singh as a child because he was growing up with a disability in Punjab, India. He later lived in England, but he didn't start out walking until he was 5 years old. So he was leading, he was still having a good life and his family supported him, but things were hard for him. And, oops, wrong pages. Anyway, when people would say that they had doubts about him, one of the repeating phrases was, but Fauja did not listen and Fauja did not stop. You learn all about his mom who supported him. And she also would say things like, you know yourself and what you're capable of. Today is a chance to do your best. And so there's some really great positive messages from this book. So I go back. So he learned to walk at 5. He walked a mile finally at 15. And by the age of 81, he decided to take up running. It was after he moved to England and he saw people running and he's like, where's the fire? You know, he's wondering what's going on, and realized they were smiling and they were doing this for fun. So he started running, and it was great because it kind of pulled him out of a depression he was in. This is after his wife had died, after he had moved to a foreign land and didn't really have anything to do during the day except for watch TV while his family was out working. In 2011, he became the first 100-year-old to run a marathon. And he found his strength and inspiration from his Sikh faith and his mother's supportive words. He also was trying to battle some ageism and some bias against different religions. And so he did a lot of traveling. He's still alive, last I checked. And we have the nice tall spread for when he finished that marathon. There's lots of good back matter in the back, including a real photograph of him. So I think this book will have a lot of support for schools that have running clubs or maybe want to have a running club. If your PE teacher is doing a running unit, that would be a great thing to have. Or if you have a 5K in your town, maybe this would be a good book to pair with an event like that at the public library. I didn't know much about Sikhism before I read this book, and I was fascinated and wanted to learn more. There's a bit about it in the back matter. He also was illiterate. He never went to school. So there are so many different connections you can make with this book, and I just think it's great. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Leaf. We'll give you a little break and go to Kara for Our Little Kitchen by Jillian Tamaki.
Okie dokie. Are you hungry? I'm always hungry. I love this book so much. And it was great when earlier Andrea Cerrumi talked about Jillian Tamaki, who's one of my very favorite illustrators. I noticed that she talked about movement, which is one thing that you totally see. So two of the things I love the most, swirling images of food. Come on, moving and really diverse people and eating. Here it is. This is a really fabulous story about a community of folks eating and sharing. It's also a mutual aid book. Our Little Kitchen is about a group of folks getting together and bringing what they have available, whether it's from the garden or whether it's leftovers from their house or whatever's just in the community kitchen refrigerator, whatever they can find, beans, food, you know, fruits, salad, whatever you got, throwing it together from the littlest friend to some of the oldest neighbors. We've got all shapes, all sizes of people, and all different styles of speaking. So I like that too. All of the speech bubbles I've created in my mind, a different voice for all these people. Hello, hello, hello. You know, everyone's just talking and squawking. And I imagine this kitchen being a loud, boisterous place where people come together maybe every Wednesday night and feed their folks in their community. So everybody's got jobs to do. And this lady right here, she's wearing a little name tag that said "Give Peas a Chance," which makes me really happy. That little play on words. So she's a bit of a ringleader. She gets everybody working. Everybody right here is getting the things they have from the garden, the carrots, the zucchini, the tomatoes. They're a week old. We'll figure out what to do with them. There's the bread. That's, I think it's day-old loaves. That's okay. Just pop those suckers in the oven. It's all good. They have beans, 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 the musical fruit. You know, you've had beans forever. What can we do again with these beans? I don't know, bean soup, bean salad. Let's get creative together. That's what teams do. And then she uses all these fabulous talking words, right? Glug, 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 sizzle, 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 chop, 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 pick, pick, pick. So you got some beautiful onomatopoeia that your kids will totally love. And I like how she splashes those words across the page. What a fun thing to do with students is to take those kinds of Superman words, is what I like to call them too. Pow, zam, beep, beep, slice, peel, splash, and write those out. You could even do that digitally, which would be really fun. And here's my favorite character right here. 15 minutes. I love it. I love the way they look. And again, totally diverse group of characters here. You've got someone in a wheelchair. Everyone's peeling in or piling in and helping one another out. There's somebody that's got, their baby carriage, and there's some older folks and there's some teeny tiny folks, all coming together to share something delicious. And you can just hear all these voices popping out. This would be fun to act out. Actually, that just popped in my brain. And here comes the meal. Everyone's lining up, ready for the bounty. I love how this is put together. And I also like at the end, when the meal is done, how this community takes a rest, takes a break, and then the littlest one, okay, it's time to clean up. I love our little kitchen. It packs a beautiful little punch about flying around and making a great meal together with people that maybe you wouldn't know. Maybe you didn't know your neighbors as well as you could have unless you had that meal to pull everyone together. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. And swiftly moving on to Leaf to talk about Swashby and the Sea.
Okay, you got me? Yes. All right, so in Swashby, it's a self-described or declared recluse whose boat actually says El Recluso on it. And so that's Swashby. The sea is his friend, and this is who wants to be his friend, his new neighbor. This is one of those books that you gotta take the dust jacket off to be able to see all the artwork. It has the great swirls of ocean on the end papers. And, sorry about that. What's a lot of fun with this story is he's happy to be by himself. Well, not really happy. He's kind of a grumpy kind of guy. But he wants everybody to leave him alone. And he doesn't want to say it always out loud, so he'll leave these messages for the other neighbors to see. Now he says, now vanish. And the sea is its own character and will get a little mischievous and wash away just some of the letters to change the message. So now it says wish, and says she's making a wish with a starfish. They're trying to invite him over for tea. They do all sorts of things. Please go away. Changes into play. So the sea really wants him to be friends with these neighbors, and he just keeps it going. It's a fun story, even when, like, the illustrations are nice and light, even when the girl is being swept out to sea. And finally, Swashby goes after her, shows that he cares deep down. And the hermit is literally shedding his sweater, his outer armor that's helped keep him, his hat, away from her. And now he's finally accepting their hospitality, getting to know them. And it's just a lot of fun. And he has hidden little details of tattoos that make it fun as well. By the end, they are friends. He says, thank you, friend. And I think it would be a lot of fun, and of course it becomes the end. It would be a lot of fun to make some puzzles, word phrases that you could change a few letters that would totally change the meaning. And of course this would make some nice connections to some things that maybe you don't want to bring up, but the Captain Underpants books and the letters, how George and Harold Beard, they rearrange the letters all the time on the signs. Or also in Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie, they rearranged the letters on the signs when they were welcoming the 7th graders to the roller skating rink, things like that. And these are connections to movies and shows that kids are watching today that are based originally on books. So I think that would be a lot of fun. The illustrations are just gorgeous to me, and I love the ocean. So, and I also like the fact that it's intergenerational friendship, which you don't see a whole lot. And so it's nice to encourage that in our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leaf. So we're moving towards the end here. So I'm going to ask, before we get into these last honor books, all of the committee members could turn their cameras on so we can prepare for a Q&A. And then we'll kind of quickly go through these last couple of titles, and then we'll just go right into a Q&A, and everybody will be ready to do that. So maybe we'll have just a abbreviated version of the spiel that you were going to do. So our first book is I Talk Like a River, which I think Abby was going to talk about.
Yes. It's from the shortlist, and I was not on the committee when this list was selected, but this is definitely one of my favorite books that was published in 2020. I Talk Like a River is written by poet Jordan Scott and illustrated by Sydney Smith, and the illustrations are just beautiful and luminous, and it provides a gentle and thoughtful portrait of one child's challenges with stuttering. The back matter is a really intimate letter from the author describing his own stutter and struggles with disfluency. And this definitely is a title that addresses a topic usually left out of picture books. Not only does it take on a challenging theme, but it does so with simple grace and elegance that humanizes a condition that many, many children and adults struggle with. So after a bad speech day, Dad takes him down to the river and points out that he talks like a river. And I love the illustration here. Boy and his dad at the river. Pulling, churning, whirling, and crashing. And the climax of this story is this amazing double-page gatefold. So the boy's eyes are closed and he's lit from behind with the afternoon sunlight. And his body just glows. And when you open the pages, we see, it's like we see inside this sun-dappled river, and the boy is in it, but we're viewing him from behind. And on the next page, he's swimming against the current and reminding himself, I talk like a river, I talk like a river. I have shared this title with our speech language pathologist before, who's used it with several students who are working on smooth speech. And it's just gorgeously illustrated with a beautiful and important message. And I really encourage you to share it with your readers. Done.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
We will go to Kara with Comb Cat.
All right, people, I really fought for this book because I like to laugh and I really like animals. Plus, it's the cone of shame and it makes me so happy. This is a story about having a personal catastrophe, but then, you know, thinking maybe that's an opportunity for fabulous things to happen if you just flip it. This is Jeremy. Jeremy's been to the vet. Things did not go well for Jeremy, as you can see, but Jeremy figures out, well, you know, I can't reach everything I actually want to reach, or can I? Don't. If you tip the cone of shame just right, maybe the cone can be your friend after all. Maybe you're able to stalk things even better than before. Maybe all the stuffing can get inside. Maybe when you go to the party, hang on, it's gonna get better, and you're standing in line, maybe someone will plop some delicious sherbet into your waiting cone of shame. This is the best picture of, I don't know, I think I'm gonna draw that and make it into a ginormous bulletin board just for myself, or maybe a t-shirt, because it's so beautiful. I would like someone to plop a giant plop of pink sherbet flat dab into my mouth while I'm wearing the cone of shame. That could be a Halloween costume right there. Okay, so when you're having a dreadful day, don't worry, the cone of shame will come off. Remember, you'll be free again at some point to destroy curtains or whatever it is that you really like to do. And someone loves you anyway. Yet another personal catastrophe will come your way. Don't worry. You're a cat. You're resourceful. You'll get back on your feet.
Thank you so much, Kara.
Sure.
We'll go swiftly on to We Are Water Protectors, which Hannah will talk about for us.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be super quick. I have a ton to say about this book, but I want you guys to know that when a book wins the Caldecott Medal, it like sometimes affects our discussions more. Like people are going to probably read that book anyway because it won the Caldecott Medal, right, for its illustrations. And so I'm here to say, like, definitely read We Are Water Protectors. So this book is important because it's written by two Native women, written and illustrated by Carol Lindstrom and Michaela Goad. Carol Lindstrom is Anishinaabe and Métis, and Michaela Goad is Tlingit, and it's important to hear those Native voices and stories from them. And this book is a book about activism and standing up for what you believe, and it has a refrain that says, we are still here, we stand with our songs and our drums, we are still here, and Native people cultures are still here, and it's really important that we share them with our students. And when you're reading this, it's really great paired with the book Young Water Protectors by Aslan Tudor, which is a memoir of participating in the standing protests by a Native kid who was 8 years old when he did that. So read We Are Water Protectors with your kids.
Anna, awesome, speed run.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll go.
Powerful punch.
Abby, and Old Rock is not boring.
Okay, I'm just going to say a couple things. Rocks can actually be pretty interesting, and that's the whole premise of this book. And it started with Deb Paludi, the author and illustrator, doing a doodle of a rock and thinking that it might be a cool character, and then saying, no, it won't, it's a rock. There's nothing interesting about a rock. And then she luckily kept going with the idea, and she played around with it, and it turns out Old Rock has seen a lot of things in Old Rock's life. Old Rock has seen dinosaurs and mastodons and been moved around by ice and gravity and lava. And his Old Rock's friends, their minds are changed after Old Rock talks to them about all the things that Old Rock has seen. So the friends are a hummingbird and a spotted beetle and tall pine. And Old Rock also sees all of them come onto the scene because Old Rock has been there for so long, watching everything around the forest change. So again, I guess I like books that play with scale, like the universe book. So again, we see Old Rock's timeline. It's kind of like a cartoony timeline, and we see Old Rock has been here for 18 billion years and formed in a volcano and is now sitting in the forest with Old Rock's friends. So just a fun, playful book about time. And yeah, enjoy. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. And then finally, we would have Woodland Dreams, which Diane will present.
This is Woodland Dreams by Karen Jameson with illustrations by Mark Boudevant. And it is a story that reads like a lullaby. It's all about, starts in the evening, you can see the little pink glow. It's all about a kid walking through the forest and seeing all the animals go to bed. And if you look closely, you'll see that the kid has a notebook and a pencil and is doing something the whole way. Eventually they get home and it's their turn to go to bed, and you get the first inkling of what they've been working on the whole time they've been walking through the woods. And then in the very end, you get to see all the beautiful drawings that they made of what they saw. It's a lovely book, really sweet for bedtime. That's it.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Welcome.
All right. So before we get into the Q&A, I just want to do a quick wrap up of some housekeeping things, and then folks who want to stay a little bit to ask the committee questions can do so, or if you need to skedaddle, you can skedaddle. We would just want to thank everybody for coming today to our conference. We really loved having you here. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. We ask that everyone completes the evaluation form that will be sent in a follow-up email. There will also be a link to request a certificate of attendance if you need that for your administration. On the conference evaluation form, once you submit the evaluation, this is where we trick you. On the confirmation page, you will see a link. If you do not have all of the Red Clover nominees and you would like a second book one other in addition to the one you requested on your registration form. That is where you can request a second book. Many of our registrants said that they would donate their allotted book to a library that didn't have all of them, so we have extra books available. So if you don't have all of the nominees and you would like a second nominee, complete the evaluation, you will see a link to that form and you can request a second one. We are going to make a book order after we collect all of those second requests and everything, and we will mail those out or put them in the courier as soon as we have them. And yeah, I think that's all that kind of wrap up stuff. In the follow-up email, I'll have the link to the Red Clover page. Check back next week and the recording will be there, as well as the PowerPoint and some other things. I probably won't send out another entire new email afterwards. Just check back next week at that link and it will be there on Monday, probably Monday afternoon. Takes a long time for these videos to render, the recordings to render. All right, Jonathan, do you want to say anything before we get into the Q&A?
I just want to thank everyone in the committee. Really fantastic job. Again, all of your hard work, it's very much appreciated. Again, a big shout out to Andrea, really fantastic. And thanks to Jennifer for doing all the things. And a special shout out to Josh Muse, who is also helping with tech stuff today.